Good afternoon, I'm Marcy Ian.
And I'm Dwight Drummond.
On behalf of the BlackNorth Initiative, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. We are coming together collectively and individually to take on the work, take on the discomfort, and commit to what promises to be an afternoon filled with eye-opening conversations. We acknowledge that the city of Toronto was built on the unceded land of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. We honor the original keepers of this land, past and present, recorded and unrecorded.
We have an opportunity to disassemble the system, and we have inherited and set a new standard our country can be proud of. We have a program filled with CEOs, leaders, and renowned athletes from across Canada, and a special thank you to Masai Ujiri, who will be joining us from the NBA bubble in Florida. We will hear from Black CEOs and athletes sharing their stories of resistance and resilience in the face of anti-Black racism, as well as allies speaking to the systemic racism they have minimized and not recognized. Today, you will see leaders like yourselves make a commitment towards anti-racist action. We are here to hold ourselves and each other accountable. We're here to make mistakes. We're here to be uncomfortable, and we're here to do the work. We'll be chatting with them remotely and in studio, taking social distancing and safety precautions, but we encourage you to join the conversation on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BlackNorth Initiative Summit and follow the handles at BlackNorthCA. We'll be answering questions throughout the summit and follow up to respond afterwards as well. We hope that the conversations inspire you to make change within your own community, organizations. BlackNorth will be looking for volunteers, so stay tuned to find out how you can get involved.
The world has ignited in protest as we as Canadians examine systemic racism right in our own backyard. This summer, we have seen organizations such as Black Lives Matter and Not Another Black Life continue the movement, leading sit-ins, teach-ins, rallies, and protests demanding action. The BlackNorth Initiative, in particular, the CEO pledge, is an opportunity for corporate Canada to take accountability, take action, and answer that call. Wes Hall, the chair and founder of the BlackNorth Initiative, believes that systemic racism is something to be fought, not tolerated, and has led the change to create a call to action across corporate Canada. Let's take a look.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
Now let's turn to the United States, to the city of Minneapolis. The city is still reeling from the death of an unarmed black man in police custody.
I am George Floyd. I am Ahmaud Arbery. I am Angelo Ku. I am too many names to count. And these are just the names of those whose lives were cut short.
He's like, please, I can't breathe, and they did not care.
What about the names of those whose lives were made harder, whose success was stifled, whose value was diminished, whose hard work wasn't rewarded, who fear for their families, who know for them it's just different? The names of those who live with the pain, the burden, and the terror of anti-Black systemic racism every single day.
We live in a time where Black men and women and boys and girls can be choked and shot and beaten and lynched in broad daylight by murderous pigs.
Their time is long overdue. We can't be silent anymore.
Take your knee off our neck.
We can't delay another day. And make no mistake,
So they are frustrated.
this isn't just an American
There
issue.
is no systemic discrimination.
It's a Canadian one too. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And it's not enough to just not be racist. We need to be anti-racist. It's not enough to just stand in solidarity. We need to move in solidarity. It's not enough to just condemn. We need to transform from the inside out, as individuals, as families, as communities, as companies, as a country. BlackNorth is a call to action. It's a movement in the making, and it starts today. We're mobilizing the corporate community to not only transform itself, but to transform the country to move as one, to end anti-black systemic racism once and for all. From the boardroom to the classroom and everywhere in between, there is no limit to what we can accomplish together, and the time is now. The world has put us all on notice, and we will answer the call with courage, with commitment, with collaboration and level we haven't seen before, because this is the fight of our lives. So welcome to BlackNorth. Let's get to work.
Let's get to work indeed. Welcome to the beautiful Great Hall in downtown Toronto. My very first guest is the Executive Chairman and Founder of Kingsdale Advisors and the Chair and Founder of the BlackNorth Initiative. Please welcome Wes Hall. Hi. I'll just wave at you. I'll wave at you, Wes. Please have a seat. So Wes joins us here in studio to talk more, tell us more about the BlackNorth Initiative and in particular, Wes, your vision for the future. It's so great to see you. You know, you had said in the video that we just saw that this is not just an American problem, this is very much a Canadian issue as well. And it got me thinking, you know, back to almost 25 years ago, when Olympic great Donovan Bailey was asked, is there racism in Canada? Is it anything like the States? And he said, absolutely there is. It's just a different kind of racism. And there was anger after those comments. People were taken aback. But here we are, almost 25 years later.
Yep. I think we hear the stories about the 1968 Olympians, John Collars and Thomas Smith, and we know what happened in that case. We know what happened with Muhammad Ali, that he was censored and he went to prison. We knew what happened to Malcolm X. We know what happened to Martin Luther King Jr. We also know what happened to Colin Kaepernick. Those are all American stories. I don't think people realized that Donovan Bailey spoke up in Canada and that he essentially lost everything. Really, if you talk to Donovan today, he'll tell you that he lost hundreds of millions of dollars because of speaking up. Because
in sponsorships. In
sponsorship, because when was the last time you've seen him in a television ad, or advertising a sneaker, or anything like that? He's the most decorated Canadian athlete that we've ever seen. Two-time Olympic champion, two-time world champion. He doesn't even have a Order of Canada pin, and we have other athletes that actually. They have their pins waiting in Ottawa for 10, 15, 20 years. They haven't even picked it up. And this is a man that actually Canada should celebrate the diversity and celebrate his achievement, and we really haven't done that yet. So when I took the pen and wrote the op-ed, those were the stories in the back of my mind, right? Is that gonna happen to me? And fortunately, business leaders kind of stepped up and say, no, we're not gonna let that happen. We're going to be by your side, and we're going to work with you, and we're going to help.
Mm-hmm. And right now, Wes, we have more than 3,000 people tuning in right now, listening. So I want to take you back to that moment where you thought, I have to do something. I can't be silent here. So speak to that, and also the whole idea of continuing this fight, not letting up on the gas, keeping our foot on the pedal.
You know, we've seen this movie before. When we think about it, back in the 70s, for example, we saw a lot of people who had flour in their hair and they're smoking marijuana. They said, you know, we are against injustice of all kinds. We're against the Vietnam War. We're against a lot of things. And yet, those are the people that are actually in powers of authority that are excluding other folks like blacks and indigenous in particular. And but they were fighting with us. They were fighting for us back then. But as they were raising up, they didn't realize that the system was set up to filter out blacks and indigenous as they were rising. And when they really looked to their right and to their left, they didn't really realize that no one else, we weren't there with them. And so really, you know, when after George Floyd got murdered, it was very clear that, and because we're dealing with COVID and people are watching TV and they became fully aware, I think people were looking at it and saw what happened and they go, was I witnessing this all along and I just didn't get it? And, you know, so everyone decided that we had to do something about it. But we have to diagnose what the problem is that we're going to do something about. Is it a racism problem, or is it an anti-black racism problem? And so
those are two very different things.
Those are two very different things, right? And somebody described it to me this way. I'm a person of color, Wes, and I've experienced racism. And I go about my life and I hear somebody say something to me and I go, I'm going to get him. And you dealt with that person. You dealt with them. And then 20 years later, they meet another person who showed them some racism. And they would go, and they dealt with them. But I never really felt that the system was against me. I never felt that every step of the way, I have to fight a system that was set up to discriminate against me. So that's the reason why we have to use the term anti-black systemic racism, because the system is really against blacks, and that's the reason why you don't see blacks in prominent positions.
And that's why, there are those who say that the system isn't broken, it was meant to be that way. That's what systemic racism is. We've been watching the call for justice for Black lives happening all across the globe. And in Canada, many are continuing to fight for Regis Korchinski-Paquette, Jermaine Carby, Jazz Chowdhury, Orlando Brown. There are countless other victims. Yet again and again, we hear people dismiss and in fact outright ignore the presence of systemic racism right here at home. This is not just an American issue, this is a Canadian issue. This is an issue that is built into our culture, and we know we cannot end systemic racism in Canada without addressing it. So there has been an outpouring of people to you, Wes, who have told you their story. So tell us what you're hearing and why you think some Canadians are so hesitant to face the reality, and in your words, you say this time and time again, do the work, put the work in.
I think we just have this view that we're such friendly, polite Canadians, we can't be having the same problems that they're having in the United States. But there are hundreds of stories. It's heartbreaking to hear the stories, actually, about blacks and how they're treated in society. And we're not just talking about, people say corporate Canada, really picking on corporate Canada. This is not a corporate Canada problem. This is in every single sector. It's in governments, it's in municipal governments, federal government, provincial governments. It's in not-for-profits. It's everywhere, everywhere. So we need to make sure that we deal with it. We deal with the problem, we identify the problem, and we deal with the problem. One of the problems that we've had in this society is that in Canada, Black history, first of all, it's not taught in schools, right? And in fact, the history aren't even recognized. In this whole process, I did some research, and there's a guy by the name of Robert Sutherland, and that name, probably nobody knows the name, Robert Sutherland. Robert's a black man, Jamaican man. Robert was born in 1830, and he immigrated to Canada, but they didn't immigrate back then the way we immigrate today. If you immigrate from Jamaica to Canada, you would be immigrating in a slave ship. So he was 1830, he died in 1878, he went to Queen's University. And Robert, when he graduated Queen's, he went to law, to law school at Osgoode Hall Law School. And he practiced law for 20 years in Walkerton, Ontario, the small town where my wife is from. And when he died in 1878, he gave his entire estate, $12,000, his entire estate, to Queen's University. And you know what happened? It saved the university because it was on the verge of bankruptcy. And that $12,000 was the entire operating budget for a year for Queen's University. Today, Queen's is known as a white school.
It is, absolutely. But look at the history you just shared with us.
But this black man saved that school. And the sad thing about it is, there's not even a plaque recognizing what he did for that university. And in fact, it's 1997 that a bunch of students said, we're going to do a task force to recognize this man. And you know how he's recognized? By a scholarship. Not a plaque, not a monument, nothing. And if it wasn't for this man, Queen's University would not exist today. A black man, a Jamaican man like me. We have to tell our stories. BlackNorth is all about telling our stories so people actually know, and I hate to use the word, we're not freeloaders. We're hard workers. You give us an opportunity, we're not going to let you down. And so when kids grow up and see that black people have contributed to this society for hundreds of years, they'll know that we're not begging for things. We just want what we're entitled to, which is a part of equality and a part of the conversation. That's it. But could you imagine this man, when he opened the doors in 1830, when he practiced law, and he started practicing all those years ago, he would have thought that I just opened a floodgate for all these lawyers to practice law in Ontario, Upper Canada now. And we still don't have a managing partner of a law firm that's black.
And it's 2020.
Ever,
Yeah.
right? This man, so that's the reason why we can't just ease up. Because of the fact that if we do ease up, we go backwards. Because once you think you're making progress, and why is it in 2020, we're still talking about the first black? We saw a big article, the first black education minister, education director of the TDSB. The first, why are we talking about the first black when we've been here for over 400 years? We shouldn't be. We should be ashamed of ourselves for saying that the first black. We should be celebrating our diversity. And again, with all the people involved and coming to us to say, this, we should change the conversation. So I'm really encouraged by all the CEOs coming forward to say, we get it, and we'll change the conversation.
Absolutely, and you touched on something there, because we know that if kids can see it, they can be it. And so when we aren't including history, our history, in courses, even at an elementary, I would argue it should begin at an elementary level. If they can't see themselves, then how do they aspire? How do they dream? How do they meet goals? So it starts at a very, very young age, you know, where psychologically we're feeding a message into young black brains that you haven't contributed, you can't contribute, you're not as good. And that in itself is highly problematic.
Yeah. And if you think about the global pandemic, because this whole thing was patterned after the global pandemic. Like this year, we were confronted by a global pandemic. You know, this global pandemic closed our borders, shut down our businesses, and it confined us to our homes. You know, to save humanity, we had to work collectively to solve the problem. You know, this we had to do overnight. However, this global pandemic has been plaguing us for years. This anti-black systemic racism, our businesses, and our society in general have been plagued by that global pandemic. So what do we do about it? Anti-black systemic racism has to end. However, this global pandemic is here. It's been here for centuries. It's here in Canada. It's not a US problem. As business leaders, we must be aware that this pandemic has a material negative impact on our business, our black employees, and their families. If we think of the percentage of people in distress related to related to racism, we had the Kids Help Phone. They actually did a study back then, and the study says that the actual number of children that had distress as a result of racism went up 7%, from 7% to 15%. And so what does that mean? It means that our kids are in distress. They're talking about racism, and all those kids, they're talking about suicide when they talk about racism. So what do we have to do when we hear those conversations? We know that traumatically, it really affects our kids, so we need to do something about it.
We absolutely do. You are a father of 5. You must have been thinking about your kids. You must have been thinking about their experiences when putting this together. Tell us about that.
You know, my children, I have 3 boys and 2 girls, and my boys are in their 20s. And the bottom line is that they experience it. You know, my kid, you know, after I wrote my op-ed article, my son said to me, you know, when I come home at night, we live in Rosedale, and he said, when I come home at night, I actually, when I see an older white person coming towards me, I actually cross the street to make them feel comfortable.
Wow.
Right? And they tell me, and they didn't tell me a lot of these things until after the fact. It makes it so, when you think about it, here's your kids experiencing all these things, and it's so normal to them that they don't even tell you anything about it. They don't even come home and say, guess what happened to me today? Right? One of my sons, he's pulled over like 3 times in one year. And what does he ask when the police come to his car? They said, you know, how can you afford a car like this, right? So these things are conversations that we hear constantly, and the question is, what do we do about them when we hear them? You know, do we go back to our day, or do we try to do something about them? So this whole initiative that I, you know, was able to start with the help of so many others is really to bring awareness to those conversations and hopefully end them.
Hopefully end them, because it's about collectively
Yeah.
solving this. We can't end this in a day.
Yeah. You know, when we think about COVID-19, for example, if we had worked on our own to solve COVID-19, if we had a group of business leaders that go, we're going to solve it this way, and then I decide that I'm going to do it my own way, we would be dealing with COVID-19 right now. We'd be locked up in our homes right now because we realize that we have to solve it collectively. So that's what we have to do with anti-Black systemic racism. We can't say in isolation, we're going to solve it, right? Why? Because a lot of the problem, the individuals that are trying to solve a Black problem, they're not using Blacks to solve the problem. They're not even consulting Blacks to solve the problem. So it's folks who are saying, I think this will be good for the Black community, and as a result of that, I am going to do these things because I think it's good for the Black community. Let's consult with the Black communities. Let's consult with them, see what's worked for them, and let's also measure what we've accomplished together. COVID-19, what was going on was that every single day, what do we get? A COVID-19 report. How many cases?
An update, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many, you know, how many recoveries? And all those things. And as a result of all that, right? As a result of all that, we now know that we're progressing.
Yes.
And things are getting better. And as a result of that, we now know that we can start to open up our businesses. Could you imagine if we didn't track our results and how we're progressing? Would we be able to open our businesses? Wouldn't be able to do that.
Absolutely. So many people have reached out to you and told you their stories. These are Black Canadians. Some of them, you know, are worried about their children, some with biracial children. They're asking questions, they're sharing with you. Can you share a little bit about what you've heard?
Well, you know, my child, my wife is white, and you know, when my 6-year-old came home and was crying, and he said he was crying to his mom, and he said, you know, Mom, I don't want to be Black anymore, because he was called the N-word at school. A lot of people don't understand really what anti-Black systemic racism is, right? I live in a nice neighborhood, and a repairman comes to my house, and he would say, go get Mr. Hall, please. Or I'm jogging through the neighborhood with my wife, and a neighbor would say, could I use your personal trainer one day?
Wow.
Right? Or I'm driving to work on a conference call with the chairman of the board of one of my clients, and I get pulled over because my car is too nice. You know, so those are anti-Black systemic racism that, you know, we shouldn't have to be subjected to. And the sad thing about it is people go, as you climb the ladder and you become so much more successful, you don't have to experience these things. Actually, we experience it more because we always find ourselves in places that not many of us are, right? I go to very nice restaurants. I take vacation at very nice hotels. And I drive nice vehicles. I live in a great neighborhood. So as a result of being in places where there's not too many people like you are there, you experience it more than others who may not have the same, you know, the same access to things as a result of your wealth or your success.
I want to know more about that because there are certain pressures to being first, to crossing certain thresholds and being Black while doing that. So, you know, there's this eye on your community, but there's also an eye on progress and moving forward. But every time you walk through a door, you're literally bringing a community with you. So talk a little bit about that and what it's been like and what you hope, what your vision is for this initiative.
You know, being first is not something that I pride myself. I don't even say it. I don't like saying it because, again, we're in 2020. There's 1.1 million Black people in this country, 3.5% of the population. Why should I be proud to say I'm the first to do anything? It almost suggests that my other Black people aren't just as capable, right? And I know they are as capable. You know, but when you get the opportunity to get into that room, Unfortunately, you have to represent your race because everybody in that room expect that they're gonna look at you a little bit differently. And I wear that with pride in the sense that I know what I can do when I get in the room. I don't have to worry about getting in the room. I just need access to the room so that I can show others, that others like me can do the same bang up job that I do when I'm in the room. So, and I also say that when I'm the first or the only, if I'm the only person in the room of color or the only black person in the room, it's an education, it's a moment for me to educate the room, as to why others like me belong in that room. So how I interact with people in that room opens a door for others, or make the people in the room more comfortable to invite others like me in the room. So my job is to give them that opportunity to be so comfortable that they go, okay, it's not as bad as I think, bring others in. And that's really what we're trying to say to companies. When you invite and be an inclusive workforce, it's not as bad as you think. And once you get to experience it, you're gonna be voluntarily bringing others in. I don't have to get you to sign a pledge because you're gonna do the right thing anyways.
Because we've seen that inclusivity equals better business. It makes business sense, right? We've seen that.
McKinsey did a great study, and we're going to hear a little bit about it earlier, that indicated that if you have a gender diverse or even racially diverse board, you're going to be outperforming your peer group. So as a CEO, we don't like leaving money on the table. And so if we don't have a diverse, in the sense that it's culturally diverse and gender diverse, we're not going to be having we're going to be okay.
We're looking at the board of directors right now.
That's right.
Speaking of diversity.
So the whole, when we look at the board that we have, for example, we have indigenous leaders, we have blacks, we have, we really represent the cultural mosaic of Canada on that board. And that's what we want other business leaders to do, because I can tell you, because of the work that we have ahead of us right now, we have some very heavy lifting to do. Why wouldn't we want to recruit the people with a very diverse background, very diverse in all areas, to now help us with this heavy lifting? Let's say, for example, I put just only black folks on the board. Only blacks. That's all I have. How's my perspective going to be, right? And how is it going to look, me telling other board members to have a diverse and inclusive board? Right? I have to talk the talk. But when you think of the names of the people that says, I want to be a part of this, it is absolutely incredible, that they want to put their name to it because they see that they can be a solution to the problem. And if we get the best minds to attack a problem, guess what's going to happen? We're going to solve it a lot faster.
Absolutely. One more question for you, and I want it to be about legacy. Is this a legacy piece, or is this more than that?
I think this is a legacy for everyone involved. Everyone, not just myself. I'm just one individual that's involved in this entire process. But at the end of the day, the whole objective is for us to look back at this moment in history. Look at this day, July 20th, 2020. And we can remember 2020 for two things. We can remember it because of what COVID did to us all, or we can say it was the year that anti-black systemic racism came to an end in Canada. And so we can look back at it with regrets because we failed to act today, or we can look at it and say, I'm so happy. Nobody's gonna remember how much money you've made for people or how many people you made rich today. Nobody's gonna remember that. But people are gonna remember what you've done with respect to this matter, anti-black systemic racism today. And that's the side of history that you want to be on.
The right side of history.
The right side.
Thank you so much for being so open, for getting this along with an incredible team done in 47 days, which is amazing. We're going to hear a lot more from you, Wes, throughout our time together. But also, we're going to hear from other board members for a panel discussion. First, though, I'm going to pass things over to Dwight.
Conversation there. Thank you, Marcy. Earlier, I had the chance to speak with Canadian NHL player and star Evander Kane. The San Jose Sharks forward is one of the professional players who founded and co-leads the Hockey Diversity Alliance, a new organization focused on dismantling the cultural systemic racism within the sport. I spoke with Evander about the organization and his own experience with racism while growing up playing hockey. Take a look. So, Evander, really appreciate you making time for us today, man. We know you're a busy man with a new baby, but this is important, and we're really glad you're able to do it.
No problem. Yeah, happy to do it.
For anyone who isn't familiar with it, could you please tell us about the Hockey Diversity Alliance and what inspired you to start it, Evander?
Guys coming together and taking a stand within hockey and obviously within society in terms of understanding that racism is an issue in our game and it's an issue in society. Obviously, it's a lot more highlighted in the U.S., but in Canada has issues as well. And we wanted to come together as minority players to help racism, help eradicate racism, and bring attention to the fact that in order to be more diverse as a sport, we have to rid ourselves of the true problem, which is racism. And we want to help combat that. And we want as many allies backing us up and speaking the same message that we are.
You've been called things like arrogant and cocky for some of your unnice behavior. Some things that you said that if you're a white player, you wouldn't have been, some of those adjectives wouldn't have been used against you. Can you describe how it felt the first time you read some like hatred-fueled content about yourself?
It's never fun. I was in the NHL as an 18-year-old in Atlanta and followed that year up with another year in Atlanta as a 19-year-old. There weren't those type of adjectives thrown around. There weren't these type of stories or issues or whatever you want to call it, rumors. When I was in Atlanta as an even younger player, and then our team moves to Winnipeg, and I'm excited to go there. It's a Canadian city. It's a big market for hockey. There's going to be a lot more attention, on our team, and I'm all for that. I love the lights, camera, action part of the game, the entertainment side of the game that we lack as players and as a league. And I thought, obviously, being in the Canadian market, you're going to get a little bit more of that. So to hear those type of things being said, being made up, 99% of it, it didn't sit well with me. It made me question where this is truly coming from, because there have been plenty of examples of other guys throughout the history of our league and even to date that have had issues on or off the ice. And they've been handled in a much different light. They've been reported in a much different way. They've been talked about in a much different way. And for some reason, it was just different with me. And there's other examples of that as well.
Did you realize at the time that these were racist tropes being thrown at you? Did you understand it as a young person, why this was happening to me? And you're looking at somebody else doing the same thing and says, well, why aren't you being criticized for this?
Yeah. Again, you kind of question where things are coming from. You try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I wasn't naive to the fact that I am a minority in a predominantly white sport. My mom is the first one to seek out and understand and really pick apart how I'm portrayed, and she picks up on these racist tendencies from other white people, her being a white woman.
She knows what's happening to her son.
Yeah, she almost gets it more than I do, and maybe that's because she's married my dad, so she's been around that type of stuff for a longer period of time than I have, and I think I've been lucky. I've had really great support from my family through everything, but at the same time, those type of things can deter young children that want to have an interest in hockey, that want to play the game of hockey. And I think it starts at such a young level. It starts at such a young age, and whether it's coaches, parents, staff members, other players, they try to discourage you as a minority from an early onset to try to get you out of the game, whether that's because they're jealous that you're better, whether that's because their parents feel that they're taking away from their son. I mean, it's incredible the thought processes that go through some of these people's minds. Even though they don't flat out say it, their actions
it's
their
there. Yeah.
actions, showcase that.
Let's talk about growing up in hockey, because hockey's religion in this country. I mean, we love this game, but when you hear stories of young black players having the N-word hurled at them from the stands, from other players on the ice, people throwing banana peels on the ice. As a young person growing up in that game in this country, how did you make it through that, and what are some of the things that happened to you?
Yeah, it's disheartening to hear those stories and hear that is still going on today, especially at the youth level. Because what it does is it discourages minorities and players of color of wanting to be a part of this great game, and maybe not just as a player, but maybe as a coach or a staff member or a manager. So those things have to stop. That's a big reason why we created the HDA. Growing up on the West Coast, I think I might be the only black player from BC, or anyways, current NHL player, and I kind of grew up alone. I wasn't out east in Toronto where there was at least a couple of us. I was kind of on an island by myself, and first racist incident happened when I was 10 years old, and I guess I was maybe too good, and some of the other parents didn't like it, and I took a penalty, and they came over to the penalty box and started banging and pounding on the glass and calling me the N-word, calling me a monkey, saying we should chop your effing legs off, calling me a piece of shit.
Just because you're doing
these are grown adults. These are 30,
at 10 years
40
old.
Adults. And
10 years old.
10 years old, sitting in the box. My dad was the coach, and I remember when I got out of the box, I went over and told my dad, and he just told me he didn't tell me to not worry about it, but he said, let's just focus on the game. We'll deal with it later. We won that game, and then afterwards, the other coach on the other team, who was the father of the other team's goalie, he refused to shake my dad's hand and told him somebody should really knock his block off. So and I remember that because I was right in front of my dad, so I heard it behind me, and
wow.
That was the first of many incidents, and it was funny because as a 10-year-old in a way, I was kind of laughing when these parents were doing that, and I think maybe the reason I was able to kind of shake it off was just because the way I was raised, and even as a 10-year-old, and kind of understanding, and maybe just having the support of my dad being the coach. But not every kid is lucky to have that. To have that, right? And again, did it affect me? Sure. I think it made me stronger.
What steps do you think, Evander, is necessary from the grassroots level? Because you seem to be really talking about kids here and how difficult it is for the kids trying to come up in the sports. How do we ensure that it is more inclusive then for these kids? Because we have kids of all different races and colors out there that could be in the NHL and maybe have the ability to play, but they don't look at hockey's not for them. Hockey's for white guys. They don't want us there. Like, how do you change that?
Well, I think you change that by being visible, having the minority players in our game visible, so that we can reach those type of audiences. We can reach those type of communities. You look at the NBA and you look at the NFL and how they market their players. When I was a kid growing up, I wasn't a fan of any particular team. I was a fan of players. I was a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers, not because I loved Philadelphia. It was because my favorite player was Allen Iverson, right?
Yeah.
You become a fan of a team because of certain players you have on that team. And I think as a league, we forget that a little bit. And I think it's really important and to understand that marketing us as players in the right way will help grow your game. And we need to do a better job of that. I think as minorities, especially in that area, we've been completely overlooked and undervalued. And that's been something I've talked about in the past.
With the BlackNorth Initiative launching with this inaugural summit, what do you hope that this initiative can do by implementing and expanding unconscious bias and anti-racism education? Because that's part of what BlackNorth is trying to do. Because I think some people just don't know what they're doing is affecting others the way it is, and maybe stopping kids from achieving their dreams because of the racism in their heads.
Yeah, I think when I first got introduced to BlackNorth, after talking to Wes, it was an outstanding initiative. It was something that he was ahead of the curve on. it really kind of aligned with the HDA and what we're trying to do in our sport specifically, and really matched up with what he's trying to do within the corporate world and in society, in creating opportunities for minorities and especially Black men and women and people of color. So I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of merge and create a partnership between the two entities. And really, really excited about what he's doing, because that's what it's all about. It's creating opportunities, creating an equal playing field, and growing the corporate world and the people, the decision makers, and having more opportunities for us as Black people to move up the totem pole.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your voice with the BlackNorth Initiative, and we appreciate what you continue to do to just be an example of the kind of players that could be in the NHL. Because there's a lot of young kids of color looking up at you and says, yeah, I want to be Evander Kane, man. So thank you for your time and for your work on this.
Thank you very much.
All right. That was Evander Kane. We also want to congratulate him because he is a new father. So congratulations and thank him for his time. Our next guest is the founder and co-head of the Hockey Diversity Alliance. Please welcome Akeem Alou.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for making some time for this. Thank you for what you and Evander are doing. Let's get right into it, because pre-George Floyd, you wrote an article for the Players Tribune last year, which shed the light on racism in hockey. Had a lot of people in the sports world in general talking. It was titled, "Hockey is Not for Everyone." And that brought attention to then head coach Bill Peters and the over racism that you felt that you suffered while playing for the Rockford Ice Dogs back in the AHL in the 2010, as well as some anti-Black racism from your fellow players during your 2005 season. It created change, that article, big change. Peters has since been fired as the Calgary Flames head coach. Let's talk about what you think, Akeem, the NHL. Do you think the NHL has done enough work to examine the systemic racism that exists in hockey?
We're starting out hot right away.
Yes, sir.
Quite frankly, I mean, the answer's got to be no. There's been a lot of kind of window dressing policies that have been put forth by the NHL, but there's really been no meaningful or impactful change in our game. If you look at the NHL, it's only 4% non-white, and we're talking about at the management level, front office, staff, and obviously players as well. That obviously when I came out with my story about Bill Peters in November, it was one of those things that was top news in Canada and North America for about a week. But then it was kind of brushed under the carpet, just like a lot of issues in the National Hockey League and quite frankly in hockey from the grassroots levels. So it was one of those things that I felt like it was super important to write my article, and I felt like I wanted to do it in my own words through the Players Tribune to really talk about in detail some of the issues that we're having in our game.
Why was it so important for you at that time? I mean, it led to a coach losing his job, and it led to people looking at their organization saying something is wrong here. Why was it important for you? Why now, at that time, did you feel it was so important for you to share this story? Because this is something you dealt with for decades.
For sure. One of the things that we fear, obviously, in playing at the highest level of sports, and I'm sure it's the same in the corporate world, is obviously losing your job. So obviously when I had the racial encounter with the coach, I was still trying to make it in the NHL. I was still trying to have a career to support my family. So it was a dream of mine to play in the National Hockey League, so I was scared to go against the establishment. But obviously in this time and age, my focus has turned more towards the youth and the next generation of players and trying to help them out and to have a little bit of a smoother path than I did. It was kind of coincidental that it happened, that I wrote my article 4 days before the George Floyd death, so it was kind of unfortunate that it took that event to get our conversation and to society and to the game. But I just think it's a meaningful conversation and it's time to have it now.
What are your primary goals then for the Hockey Diversity Alliance? Like we heard from Evander, some of the stories at having the N-word yelled at him as like a 9 or 10-year-old trying to shoot a penalty shot. I mean, is it those kind of stories in your own hockey life that's making you start this alliance now so kids like you won't experience those things coming up in this game?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, our goal has changed from us. Most of us are in our early 30s and late 20s, so we're starting to look at the next generation of hockey players. And our number one objective is to eradicate racism out of the game. Obviously, we're having conversations with the National Hockey League about how to do that. We think it's super important to promote diversity. The affordability and the accessibility is a tough thing. I grew up about a kilometer away from here, and
Proud Parkdale kid.
Yeah, very proud. And my mom cleaned hotel rooms. My dad delivered pizzas on bikes. So I think a lot of privileged people don't even look at the fact that it's tough for kids to get to these games. You look at what hockey costs to play in the GTHL in the Toronto area right now, it's 15 to 20K a kid. And we feel that right away that eliminates a large chunk of youth. So we're working with donors and other corporate sponsors to be able to help with ice times and equipment and those things to keep the kids involved in the game and not have them weeded out at an early age.
I was sharing with you earlier, as kids, we used to share the skates.
Yep.
So we'd go to the rink, you'd have about an hour, and each kid would get like 15 minutes because we didn't have enough money to all buy skates. The systemic racism in hockey, some people say it is a culture. So how does that impact black players, you know, from junior right up into the pro ranks? Is it more difficult for you to make it because not only do you have to make it in this tough world of professional sports, but you have this other thing of anti-black racism within the culture of the sport to fight against?
Well, for sure. I think the biggest thing kind of from my upbringing and the conversations we've had with the Diversity Alliance when we kind of came together as 9 players that have all played in the National Hockey League, and we're saying, why is everything looked at so differently when we do things compared to not people of color? Exactly. So I was told when I was in Calgary things like cut your hair or you're not going to get called up. Change the way you look, change the way you dress, the music situation.
Does your hair affect how you skate? I don't understand.
No, I don't. I don't think so. So I feel like it's super important for people not to judge you based on your skin color. My issues growing up, obviously, I was a first-round pick to the Ontario Hockey League, but I looked different. I had an afro, I dressed different, I talked different.
Try to be yourself.
I try to be myself, but that's the only thing I knew. And obviously, when I stood up to myself after the Bill Peters thing, you're looked at as a problem child. There's countless ESPN articles written about me, but when you really look at the situation and find out why are people saying these things about you, there's nothing tangible that they can come up with.
Evander went through the same thing in Calgary.
Yeah, exactly, and Winnipeg as well.
Yes, Winnipeg. Yeah.
So we're trying to eradicate that stigma of looking different. We feel kind of what we want to do is promote the game, and I feel like the National Hockey League should look at these things because we just cross the border and go to these places like Alabama and places in the South and Florida. They don't even know what a hockey puck is. And I feel like if we can get to those kids and get to those communities that are underprivileged and get these kids involved in the game, the only thing it's going to do is going to make our game better because the pool of talent is going to be that much bigger. So I think they need to look at it from that side. And also we got to start talking about personality in our game. It's a very keep your head down kind of game. Don't show any weakness, don't show any pain, don't show any personality. And I feel like when we bring out these personalities and the differences we all have, I think they're beautiful. And I think it's just going to draw people closer to our game, and they're going to want to be involved in our game.
To celebrate some of that. Maybe
Sure.
we'll get rid of some of the hazing and the other issues that
100%.
come up in pro sports. Does success then for the HDA look like, when I'm looking at, you know, say the Leafs, they actually look like Toronto, or I'm looking at these teams, is your goal to get more young people of color into the game and then make it a better experience for them while they're in there? Is that what you're hoping for with this organization?
Yeah, we want to look at 5-10 years down the road and see how comfortable are kids that look different and are of color, how comfortable are they in our game now? Because right now the conversations we're having is, from what we've gone through as an alliance and myself and kids in the game right now, they're not very comfortable. You're not allowed to show personality. So we want to see how many kids can we get into our sport. And by doing that, we have to make this game more affordable. How diverse, how inclusive can we make the sport? We're obviously working on the rate of participation. It's a very privileged, very white sport.
Very expensive.
Very expensive sport. So we're looking at these things of just how many kids can we get into our game that look different, and I think from there we're going to have a successful meter to measure on.
Parkdale kids in the game. We're going to get some more Region Park kids
exactly.
in the game. The NHL has recently vocalized support for the Black Lives Matter movement. And why do you think it's taken so long for the NHL to recognize this issue? Because you guys have been bringing this up. We've had banana peels thrown on NHL rinks at black players. Do you think that as an organization they are doing enough?
Again, I'd have to say no. I think it's...
We want you to be candid.
Yeah,
honest,
I mean, it's one of those sensitive topics where we're having, and obviously Wayne Simmons, who you mentioned about the banana incident, is part of our group. So we got to be honest when we're having this conversation. Are they saying it because they're almost forced to in this time of age, or are they saying it because they actually believe it? So we're battling with that. Kind of the actions that we've seen so far, I would say that we're kind of forcing this upon them. So we've been in constant contact with them a couple times a week, and we've asked them to partner with us on these impactful initiatives to make the game more diverse. And to be honest, until we see some tangible things come from their end, we're going to be skeptical about their motives and what they want to do. But I'm bordering optimistic on this conversation. I feel like it's 2020, and it's time to kind of make these changes. Like I said, and I go back to the potential of the sport. I feel like this is the best game in the world. It's the most exciting game in the world, but it also has the most potential in the world because there's just so little people of color playing our game. And we need to start taking a pivot about how we look at hockey and society as a whole and the corporate world.
We'll finish with this question. How important is the accountability out there, not only from the NHL, but right down to the lowest levels of the sport? If you're a parent and you hear another parent throw an N-word or some kind of slur at a kid, how important is it that there's some kind of accountability in the game, that these different leagues, when they hear about these incidents, action is taken to help some kid?
So it's funny that you asked that. We've been in obviously contact with the GTHL, which is the greatest minor hockey league in the world right now. It's produced the most NHLers, but they're having a real issue with that. And I think these things start at the grassroots level.
And you guys can help as the diversity.
Exactly. I was 11 years old when I got called the N-word in Quebec by a parent. And this is what we're kind of playing with right now is, do we start at the top at the NHL level, or do we start at the grassroots level? And kind of the way we look at it, and we got to tackle it from both sides, because I truly believe that racism is taught. I don't think you're born racist. So we need to have educational programs for parents and youth, and that's another aspect of what we're working with the HTA. And I think when this does happen, the punishments have to be severe for you to kind of understand the impact of what your words can do. So I think it's super important for us to start with these youth organizations and the National Hockey League and tackle it from both ends.
Thank you, sir, for not only talking the talk, but you and your fellow NHLers for actually walking the walk and doing the work on this. You're going to help a lot of young people in the future, and hopefully we'll see more kids like you in the game. Thank you, Akeem.
Well, I appreciate it. It was a tough step to take. Obviously, it's not a popular subject.
Put yourself out there. It was not easy.
And we're hoping that kind of some of our fruits come to fruition.
Yeah, you're going to help other people by stepping up the way you did. So thank you for that.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
Great conversation. Before and after the announcement of the BlackNorth Initiative, West Hall received countless stories from Black, Indigenous, and Canadians of color sharing their experience with racism in the workplace, just like these hockey players experience. Here are some of those experiences.
I had reservations about attending Queen's Law. When I received my acceptance, I notified some of my undergraduate professors. "Congratulations on getting accepted to the white school," one of the professors said. Despite this, I still chose to attend. My first week of law school was an immense culture shock. I thought I would meet at least one other Black law student, but soon realized I was the only one.
I work in the federal government. There's a disparity in the number of Black employees in the public service at all levels. To contextualize this, as recent as October 2019, my department hired over 100 people. but less than 3% of those hired were Black. Out of those 3%, only one was a Black male. I spoke up about the disparities this week, and I know I will face repercussions for speaking up, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. For over 2 years, I have reached out to my department's diversity committee, and I still have not received any response. Like many other committees that supposedly support diversity, this committee was inactive and served no purpose but to check off a box. I spoke up for my 2 sons. One is starting university this September to become a doctor. I speak up for them and for other young Black children that may not have the social capital to speak up.
Growing up, my parents stressed the importance of having to work harder because I was Black. They prepared me for many challenges that I would face as a minority, and until recently, I believed these challenges would always exist. I received a full scholarship to study at the University of Western Ontario for my undergraduate degree. There were only 5 Black students of 180 students in the program. I passed all 3 levels of my CFA exams and recently graduated in the top 3 in my class in my MBA program at the Richard Ivey School of Business. Yet, I was not able to get phone calls or coffee chats with any of the major banks. Many of my peers and classmates reached out to the same person within a firm. That person only agreed to have phone calls and coffee chats with the white students, even though they often had fewer qualifications. Not having an opportunity to network and build relationships creates a significant handicap in the job search process. It's surprising, having graduated at the top of my class at one of the best business schools in the country, that merely networking as a minority can be such a daunting challenge.
I chose to attend Queen's Law in part due to a lack of diversity. My law school experience is one of great pride, but being one of 3 Black students significantly shaped my experience. Some have said to me, "Good job, Nigel, you're the Black Richard Joseph," or "You're the Black insert another prominent white lawyer." Flattering, but bothersome. Not because they compare me to a white lawyer, but because they cannot compare me to a Black one. There are few Black lawyers and even fewer Black partners. I started a mentorship program where Black undergraduate students with an interest in the legal profession could partner with current Black Queen's Law students. Many of the students from the mentorship program have been admitted to and are presently enrolled at various law schools. None chose Queen's. They are unanimous in their response. There's a lack of representation. I don't see anyone who looks like me, and I also can't afford it. In the class of 2021, there's 1 Black law student. That represents 0.5% of the class. Improving representation requires alleviating financial hurdles. Systemic financial barriers continue to plague the Black community.
My brother, Samuel Osei, was a Canadian University graduate of Ghanaian descent. He was an A+ student and scored in the top 5% of his class in his chartered accountant exams in Ontario. After graduating university, he entered the workforce full-time in the corporate sector. He often expressed his negative experiences as being the only Black man working in his department. Samuel's mental health deteriorated in a way that is indescribable. In August of 2012, my brother Samuel took his own life. Amongst his last words to me were that he couldn't take it anymore. Anti-Black racism is not only a public health issue, it's a matter of life and death.
amazing stories, the only, the first, and the sometimes tragic consequences that can happen. That's why we're here today. BlackNorth invited the senior leaders from the top 250 companies and 100 private businesses across Canada to participate today and sign the pledge to end systemic anti-Black racism. This includes leaders from major banks, insurance companies, and international brands who have a significant presence in Canada, calling them to take anti-racist action within their organizations. We will break down the pledge in detail with the board of BlackNorth, but first, this is just a handful of Canadian leaders who have already signed the pledge and who are ready to get to work.
$1,198,540 Black citizens in Canada are impacted by anti-Black systemic racism every day.
Every day.
Every day. Every single day.
That's 3.5% of Canada's population.
Unconscious bias and systemic racism in society, that's a given, and we have to do our part and then some. We felt the BlackNorth Initiative was a very important pledge. We signed the CEO pledge because it's good for business, it's good for the community, and it strengthens everything we do.
There's no tolerance, and it's not just words, you see it, you gotta act on it.
I'm convinced that if we work together to fight racial disparity and racism, we'll bring about significant change.
As business leaders of some of Canada's largest corporations, we must do more to ensure that inclusion is at the core of our workplace culture and that our businesses are representative of the communities we serve.
It is time for anti-Black systemic racism to end. And the Canadian corporate community must lead the charge.
That's why we're committed to implementing the following pledge.
We commit to making our workplaces safe to have complex and sometimes difficult conversations about anti-Black systemic racism and ensure that no barriers exist to prevent Black employees from advancing within our company.
We will implement and expand unconscious bias and anti-racism education and training.
We commit to sharing our best and our unsuccessful practices so that we, alongside other companies, can collectively enhance and evolve our diversity and inclusion strategies and programs.
We will create and share strategic inclusion and diversity plans with our board of directors and establish at least one diversity leadership council.
We will ensure that these groups include diverse representation, including senior Black leaders within our organization.
We will use our resources to work with members of the Black community through the BlackNorth Initiative, starting with a commitment to hiring at least 5% within our student workforce from the Black community, and investing at least 3% of corporate donations and sponsorships to promote investment and create economic opportunities in the Black community, both by 2025.
We will engage Canada's corporate governance framework to build a pipeline so there can be representation from the Black community on the board of directors and in our C-suite.
To start, we have made a minimum goal of 3.5% of leadership roles based in Canada held by Black leaders by 2025.
We will create the conditions for success by working through BlackNorth Initiative to attract and retain talent from the Black community.
In partnership with our organization's governance committee, we commit to developing and advancing Black people within our organizations to ensure a pipeline of talent as we build inclusive leadership teams that are representative of the communities we serve.
We recognize that these commitments are not the complete answer, but we believe they are important, concrete steps toward building more diverse and inclusive workplaces across Canada.
By working together toward true diversity and inclusion within our workplaces, industries, and broader business community,
we can cultivate meaningful change for our society and end anti-Black systemic racism.
Together,
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 together, we will change Canada forever.
Both in the corporate sector and beyond.
Together, we are BlackNorth.
And that's what you call impact. We just saw some of the Canadian leaders who have already signed the BlackNorth Pledge and have committed to actioning change within their companies and organizations. With me now, the co-chairs on the board of the BlackNorth Initiative who have put this call into action. Prem Watsa, Chairman and CEO of Fairfax Financial Holdings Limited, joins us. Rola Dagher, President and CEO of Cisco Canada, is here. And Victor Dodig, President and CEO of CIBC. BlackNorth is taking a strategic approach to holding corporations and organizations accountable. So Victor, can you walk us through this model, the pledge, and then maybe we'll open up to the group to discuss more.
Marcy, thanks for the question. Thanks for having us here today. We're going to have a great conversation.
Absolutely.
On the pledge is a genuine commitment to change and a positive commitment to change that has been signed by over 200 organizations, public companies, private companies, not-for-profit companies from all fields of Canadian business and society. And it has a qualitative element to it and a quantitative element to it. The qualitative element to it is how do we meaningfully change the culture of organizations to make sure that we can once and for all end anti-Black systemic racism and racism of all forms. How do boards do that? How do we make sure unconscious bias training is in place so management teams can do that? There's a qualitative element that's very, very important. The quantitative element is equally important. How do we set forth goals for organizations not only to aspire to, but to achieve in terms of making sure that the Black community, the talented members of the Black community have a meaningful role to play in Canadian organizations. And that involves young Black leaders who are graduating from school and looking for internships, goals around leadership, goals around getting the board involved, goals around corporate donations. So it's well constructed. It has over 200 organizations signed up for it. It's a very exciting time. Rola, what's your experience, this pledge of ours that we've put together collectively?
It's been amazing and so overwhelming on so many levels, Marcy. When we started back and got the call, I would have never imagined that we could be here today. Over 250 CEOs realized that it's not just about profit anymore. It's all about people and impact and purpose. And that is the purpose of this pledge, is for Canadian leaders across the country, not just Canadian corporate Canada, government and communities across Canada. It is time for us to action, because leadership is not a title that you check, it is action, and it's time for us to do that right now collectively. Just as we're fighting COVID, we're fighting another virus, and that is so important for us that we, all of us, need to work together on making sure that we have a stronger impact.
Absolutely. And I think collectively, we do that. We've got to stand together because we're obviously stronger together. 47 days, and here we are.
Amazing.
Prem, tell us how you're feeling, whether, you thought at the beginning, could we do all of this and get all of this done? And how you're feeling about sitting on this stage now and seeing what's unfolded so far this afternoon.
Just an amazing sensation, Marcy, to see all the good things that have been developed under Wes Hall's leadership. We're co-chairs and we're very happy to support him. I wanted to read one little thing for you.
Please
because
do.
The question is, this is a study that was done in 1992, 30 years ago. And Rodney King's riots in Los Angeles went to Toronto, and the Ontario government said, let's study race. And here's the major conclusion that they came up with. First, this is the major conclusion. What we're dealing with at root and fundamentally is anti-Black racism. 30 years ago. While it is obviously true that every visible minority community experiences the indignities and wounds of systemic discrimination throughout Southern Ontario, it is the Black community which is the focus. It is Blacks who are being shot. It is Black youth that is unemployed in excessive numbers. It is Black students who are being inappropriately streamed in schools. It is Black kids who are disproportionately dropping out. It is housing communities with large concentration of Black residents where the sense of vulnerability and disadvantage is most acute. It is Black employees, professional and non-professional, on whom the doors of upward mobility is slammed shut. And he goes on, and I'll end with this, he goes on to say, Black mothers see their sons walk out of the door. They never sleep until they see their sons come back. And so when I read that, and I got this from Wes Hall, who's our founder, I said just exactly what Rolla said and what Victor said. The time is here. This is 30 years ago this was put into a study, and it was a deep study, 70 interviews, 3 or 4 hours, all sorts of information was collated. And the time has come. Canada is such a beautiful country, inclusive, diverse. I happened to come to Canada 50 years ago from India, and I just think it's inappropriate that this continues any further. And all of us and all the CEOs who've signed, from a business standpoint, we want to eradicate this anti-racism against blacks.
30 years ago, and here we are. How much of this has to do with the fact that we as Canadians will point our finger south of the border and say, but that's over there. You know, George Floyd's over there. That happens over there. That's not our story. You know, but I'm here to say, as a Black Canadian woman, it is our story.
No question.
And even when George Floyd happened, there was a lot of reporting that asked the question, does systemic racism even exist here? And I was dumbfounded by that and upset by that, because we know it does. We are so past that now. It's not a matter of if, it does. How do we break that down so that people understand that it's not about the States? It's very much about Canada, the country that we love, and that we have to take care of business in our own house first. What do you think, Victor?
Well, look, my wife's American and Canadians, and my kids are dual citizens, so I have a view on both sides of the border. Systemic racism exists on both sides of the border. It exists globally, and it exists for different reasons if you look historically as to how it evolved. But what, I asked myself is, how do we end it once and for all, and how do I as a leader show accountability? And, I firmly believe, first of all, that this is not a sociological project. For me, it's an economic project. For me, it's about economic livelihood and improving the standard of living of all people who live in our country, and improving the standard of living for our shareholders at CIBC. Candidly, I believe that this is actually going to drive economic growth. This is going to be great for our country to make sure that every Canadian, every Black Canadian, can bring their entire self to their organizations and contribute their entire self to everything that organization is doing. In our instance, it's banking. And I always say to my team, banking is a team sport. I need everybody on the team bringing their whole self. I need us all helping one another. And in this instance, specifically in this instance, we want to make sure that our talented Black employees feel like they got a shot at the top, feel like they got a shot at important leadership positions. And I want to make sure that our clients see us as a bank that represents the population that we're serving. So now is the time. It exists. There's no denying it. It's how do we make this challenge an opportunity and create economic growth for everyone?
Yeah. And same question for you, Rolla.
Yeah.
How do we change that narrative? And then looking at your company, what is job one for you in the fight against anti-Black racism, systemic racism?
I think Canadians, we're awesome people, we're proud people, and we're nice people. That's why we don't see the scale as the US, right? But I think the one job for me as a leader is, number one, is listening. The problem has been there for a long time. Leaders have not been listening enough in learning throughout what's happening. You need to listen to the stories of Black people, of how they feel and how it makes them feel in an environment where there's 1.1 million Black people in Canada, and there's almost 37 million non-Black people. Imagine the opportunity that 37 million people, Marcy, could help the 1.1 million. And the focus that if we can put in the energy on the Black people community. So we failed as leaders of actually focusing on what's important and what they need. They need to be heard. It's okay for me to say, You are a Black person on my boardroom, in my organization, because in the old days, and I'm sorry, including all of us, we didn't know the right thing to say. If I said this word, am I saying the right thing? If I say this word, am I saying the wrong thing? It is absolutely for us to unlearn the old habits and learn how do we deal with it. At Cisco, I will tell you that our CEO, Chuck Robbins, just started a mission which is empowering an inclusive world future for all. It does not matter who you are, where you are, like Victor said, bring your whole self to work. Because to me, diversity is not a box that you check. It is actually an action you have to take, because I don't want to hire people that look like me and speak like me. I want people that have the same drive and values, but then bring those powerful people in the Black community that have so much technology background when it comes to AI and machine learning, and then talk about cybersecurity. Those kids have talent. Bring it, and that's why we're here, to make sure we give every single Black person an opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, I was particularly struck, Prem, when you talked about Black mothers in the statement that you read, because I instantly thought about how I felt when I found out I was having a son, because I had 3 nieces whom I helped to raise, and then a daughter. And then along came Dash, my boy, and the anxiety levels, the stress, the worry, he's not even 9. And I thought ahead to the conversation that I'm going to have with him about, wearing the right thing. Not if he is stopped, but when he is stopped by law enforcement, what he should say. The fact that he should have his license and registration in hand so that he's not making any sudden movements. These are the kinds of conversations that Black parents, Black mothers have with their kids, or think that they will have years down the road. And so having all of that, and then walking into a workplace and having to negotiate and navigate that workplace, and perhaps being the only, and I was the first Black Canadian to do the job that I did for several years. There's a lot that comes along with that. I want to know a little bit more, Prem, about your story. When you got to Canada, what it was like, and how you forged ahead and built what you built.
Marcy, I'm so fortunate to come to Canada. Of course, when I came in, I had no money, and there was discrimination. But I never focused on that, because I said no one invited me to come to Canada, so I'm supposed to, adjust and do what I have to do. But Marcy, I don't think any other group, as I read here, has a racial discrimination like the Black people. And so just to add to what Rollo said and what Victor said, first of all, in terms of Victor's point, it's opportunity. Talent is not limited to white people or women. It's everybody. The good Lord made us all. So you're Black, you could be a Black woman, a Black person. Everyone's got talent. And so it's an opportunity to hire the Black people. And it's not a cost. It's not something that you have to have quotas and stuff. It's just that we never looked for it. To say on what Rollo said, when Wes Hall told me about this, I must say, my own background, having faced it and been able to advance in spite of it, I said, okay, I'm not going to delegate this. I talked to Wes a lot, and I'm saying, okay, I want to find out from my own people. So we are very decentralized. So I asked my president, give me 2 people from each of your companies. So I spoke to 16 people, half an hour to 45 minutes, in Canada, United States, and in the UK. And Marcy, there's no question there's systemic racism. All the things that you just said about your son, I heard from the women that I talked to in our company. They worry about that. Yep. Which side do you go when you see someone? You don't go head on, you go to the other side of the road. You don't wear a hoodie. And so the one thing that struck me when they said, there are many, many things, and we're going to go forward on it, but they said, when we look up, we don't see enough in senior leaderships and on the board. So the first thing I decided right off with our company and our board is that we're going to have a very talented black person on our board. I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to take my time, but with our board, get the right person for our company, so that a young person looking up says, oh, there's no possible. I can be that person.
They can see themselves.
He can see that.
Yeah.
I want a president who will run our companies, executives who are black who can run our companies. But I think of what Victor said. It's an opportunity. It's a, this is a land of opportunity for all of us. All of us came from humble beginnings. Victor did, Roland did, myself, and we owe it in Canada to all black people to have the same opportunity.
Absolutely.
Marcy, it breaks my heart to hear that you actually have to worry about your son now in your story, because to us, if it's not your struggle, it's not visible to you. Just piggying back on what Prem said, I came to Canada as an immigrant and escaped Lebanon literally during the war in a trunk of a car. That's 31 years ago when I landed here, and Canada was set for one demographic. I'm such a proud Lebanese and a grateful Canadian because Canada has offered us so much. But it was set for one demographic. That's 31 years ago. But today, 31 years later, black people facing this issue, it's wrong. It's wrong on so many levels, hence the reason we're having this conversation today.
So I said, let's just get to work and let's change that.
Exactly.
Right? Let's change that. And I'll give you, my story, Marcy. My mother worries about me too incessantly. She still insists that I text her when I land somewhere, and thankfully with COVID, I haven't had to do that lately. I understand your concerns, and we want to create a country where that's not a concern for you as a black Canadian mother. That should never, ever, ever fall in you should be as worried as any other mother, but not because your child is black, because they're a Canadian. And that's what we're trying to create here. And really, it's about creating those opportunities. I keep going back to the economic opportunity. My parents were refugees. My mother's first 10 years in this country was cleaning houses. And I'll tell you what opened my eyes up to the financial community and business, where the people that she cleaned houses for took an interest in me. And during the summer times, they'd take me out in a car and show me a hospital, show me a business, the things that they were doing. And I recognized that there was something else out there other than the kind of narrow circle that we grew up in, and life changed. And that's what it's all about, is how do we create those opportunities for the talented young black Canadians, the talented black Canadian leaders that know they can contribute more to our country. And as a result of that, everybody will benefit.
Let's hear more about that. How do we do it? How are we doing it? How can black Canadians get to the C-suites in this country? Because we know that that's not the case. How do we do it?
So Victor was saying, first of all, when you hire students, you have to, I heard this from many of my colleagues, black colleagues in our company, so you have to have the pool of talent. You don't get more black people to interview and apply. You're only going to, many colleges, there's only white students. So you do that. I told you about the board. You have an interesting, Marcy, was one black person said, how about reverse mentorship?
Yeah.
So Victor, you're the CEO. You talk to a black person and find out about their life, because we don't know their life, right?
That's where empathy starts.
Yeah, that's where empathy
That's
starts.
where empathy starts.
Like when you said I never realized a black mother would be worried about her black son.
Absolutely.
You don't realize that till I spoke. I heard exactly what you said when I spoke to the black women in our company. And they said that. And even if they live in a good area, they said they were worried about that. And so, but at the bottom of it is education. Somehow, in these tougher neighborhoods, to give people an opportunity in terms of education, exposure to the business world, exposure to banking, exposure to the technology end, and a spark comes up and they're saying, I can do that, right? And so all of those things. But I'm really excited about what Wes Hall has done. It's time, it's initiative to do this. And Marcy, you know this, but the Me Too movement,
yes,
it's impossible now to, for anyone to have any type of attitude towards women, and you're fired immediately, right? So I took some comfort from this guy, the Calgary Flames coach, something that happened 10 years ago, and he was fired. I think that's the best thing to get rid of racism. You display racism, you're fired. By the way, one of the things, Victor, in my company, they said, it is really nice if the leaders come out and say that we will not tolerate, and we all do, but it's nice for leaders, all your CEOs, to say publicly to your people in your town hall that we will not tolerate racism. If we catch anyone being racist, even mildly, you know, there'll be consequences. And that, this, you saw the, in the United States, the Central Park, the lady was fired.
Yes.
And so now you're seeing action, which you didn't see all of these years.
Yes.
You know, people are saying enough is enough. We're not going to.
Because I think people can see it too.
Yeah.
Social media, things are instant, 24-hour news. It isn't just hearsay.
Yeah.
People are actually seeing it.
Seeing it.
Yeah.
And experiencing it.
And experiencing
and talking to people.
Which makes a difference.
That's the other thing, Marcy. The people I found when I talked to them, they said, talk about racism.
Right.
It's there.
Yeah.
Don't put it under the carpet. And Rola, you said it. We're frightened to talk about it, right? Because you know, it's like it's something there, and you don't want to bring it out. But they want you to talk about it,
yeah.
And so that they can tell you what they've gone through. So all of you and you know, and the companies there, talk about the fact that there's racism and how you can eliminate it.
Yeah, encourage the conversation. I think the other thing I always say to my team and to those that are outside our company, I say, look, wrong things will sometimes be said as we go on this journey, but let's kind of listen to each other and let's be forgiving in terms of what we're trying to collectively achieve.
Very good.
For once and for all, we're trying to build a foundation that you can't shake. It's not like a fake structure. This is real. This is real fundamental change. You ask, you know, what do you need to do as a leader? You need, I believe in the power of positive leadership. You need to make sure that it's not an echo chamber when you set a tone, but your entire leadership group all the way through the company is feeling this way. You need to make sure that people see role models, and then the numbers have to reflect your actions. Like, what do the numbers tell us? Because if the numbers aren't moving, there's something fundamentally wrong. And that goes back to the pledge. We've all kind of signed up for changing culture so it's inclusive, it's diverse, and we're going to measure it too. And that's what business and society is all about, right? Making sure it's qualitative and making sure it's quantitative.
I think, Marcy, the other thing is words and intentions are not enough anymore because every leader could put, again, when we talk about social media, and lip service can get you far, but not where you need to be. I will tell you, it's all about executing. And leaderships and leaders today have to ensure they go out there and they get uncomfortable and get really comfortable being uncomfortable and follow through on the commitment. Hence the reason why BlackNorth is so important of bringing all best practice and worst cases as well, bad practices, so we can learn collectively. Because again, it goes back to what Prem said about talent. The biggest issue for me as a leader is finding the right talent. But as a technology leader, innovation economy today is the most important thing to bring the right people into the boardroom, into the organizations, period, and having those young kids. And leaders have to make a commitment of going out there and sponsoring and mentoring, and again, verse mentoring. It's so important for us to do. So it starts with leaders, but also it starts at home. It starts at home as parents, shifting the conversation around, it's okay for you to go out there and say this and try to help. And the other big issue that we have, our education system. there is a lot of racism as well when it comes to the schools and colleges and universities.
What is taught, what isn't taught.
Exactly, what is taught and what it's not taught. It was amazing when we wrote the op-ed and there were so many people that reached out, but one of them is a good friend of mine, a retired director of education of a school board. He said, Rolla, please make sure that you tell the world with your voice that there is a major issue with the education sector, that they need to teach kids from certain age that it's okay, you could be taught this so you can go out there and make a difference.
Absolutely. There are thousands of people listening and watching you right now, one of whom, Neil Cunningham, has this question. He says, can you please differentiate between systemic racism and unconscious bias? The first is a familiar concept to many. The latter evokes a more visceral reaction and is harder to admit being a part of. Any takers on Neil's question?
I know Neil. Hi, Neil.
Okay,
I hope you're
there
doing
you go,
well.
Victor.
Look, I think you're asking the question on what is unconscious bias, but let's just first agree that systemic racism exists in hiring, firing, promotional practices, pay practices. It exists, and there's data to prove that. Unconscious bias is typically what we bring in our own upbringing and our own experiences and our own reflections of who we are and what we think society should be like. And a lot of that has to be checked at the door. You know, so there is training that has to be done when you kind of look in the mirror and say, what do I bring to the table that just reflects the things that I may have been taught, the things that I thought were okay that weren't okay, and how do I change that about myself so that the decision-making processes around the team that I work with are devoid of that unconscious bias? And how do I make sure that our leaders check that at the door? That's really what it is. And I think it's such a soft factor that you come to this realization that there's a problem, but there's really an opportunity that can be changed when you recognize that unconscious bias does exist and it can be eradicated as well.
Yeah.
And, sorry,
go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
One of the ways you do that, I think, Victor, is just talking to people. You find, because unconscious bias, you don't, by definition, you don't realize you have an unconscious bias. Some of your people might have it. So talking about it, talking about racism brings it out, becomes, you know, it becomes in your conscience. And one lady told me, one of our, you know, that she's a manager, and someone told her, they were talking about a dictionary, and she says, you know what a dictionary is, right? She's the manager of our department, and someone said, you know what a dictionary is. And they probably didn't mean it that way, but that's how it came across.
I know.
Right? And so talking about it, I think, is the way to do it. Sorry, Rolla.
No worries. I was going to say at Cisco, and I love the culture that we have because we changed the name of HR to people and communities, and we have a conscious culture rule across the entire organization. And when the situation happened in the US, our CEO called an all hands and open format with 70,000 employees across the world, Marcy. And it was all related to what happened with George Floyd. And it was such an uncomfortable conversation, but it was so transparent because he said, I don't care who you are, check your ego at the door, because if you don't, you do not fit in the organization. And those are some of the things that big organizations are doing and leading, because people want the real, the authentic, the empathy from leaders, and to go out there and be transparent and tell the stories. Some people did not like it, but you know what? They're not with the organization anymore, because that's the culture that we have. It protects you no matter where you come from, what's your skin color, what religion, and what gender you are.
As you said, Rolla, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Okay, we've got another question here. A year from now, how will you measure your success in upholding the pledge within your organization? So how do you measure? What do you do?
The things that Victor said. Victor, go right ahead.
Well, look, first of all, I'll say there's a year from now, but it's the enduring value that we'll create from changing the commitments, from committing to change over time. You know, we have commitments around internships and graduates and executive leadership and corporate donations, and all those numbers will begin to move more than they've moved before. But I think the most important thing is, will there be enduring change, and how do you ensure as a leader that this commitment is there when you finish leading and a new leadership team comes on board so that these numbers fundamentally do change. The most important thing for me is that qualitative aspect of when an employee will come to me and say, I really feel like I'm part of this company because I'm able to bring my entire self. And when I see that happening within our talented Black employees, and you're starting to see that, but when you're starting to see that proliferate, and then the full diversity and inclusion of our organization starts to echo that, that's when I know we'll have achieved great success. I'm absolutely confident we will, but the most important thing is what happens 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So we're not talking about this. We're talking about, like, how do we create more patents in Canada and more innovation so we have more intellectual capital so that we can make our lives better and we can contribute to the rest of the world in a different way.
Yeah. I would say for me is I want to walk into organizations, my customers and partners, and I want to see a different look in a boardroom. I want to see colors. I want to see Black people. I want to see Arabs. I want to see everybody in that room. That's a great feeling, number one. And the most important thing is we on stage and everybody that's watching, we need to own it. We need to deliver on it. We have learned so much, but we will need to continue to learn because we need people to make sure that they've earned everything they worked hard for and they need to follow through. And it's time for us as leaders to make sure we return it back. And you know what? A year from now, it's going to be good, but we have to continue to take it from good to great to excellent.
We've got 20 seconds left. Prem, last word.
And what a better country than Canada to do it in, Marcy. All of these things that they talk about. This is our lovely country that we're all in, and we have the opportunity to do the things that Rollo's talked about and Victor. So I'm very excited, like them, that it'll all happen in time. We're not going to solve the problems of the world in 6 months or 3 months.
But this is a great start.
But it's a tremendous start. It is. It's a fantastic start.
Prem, Rolla, Victor, thank you so much. You've been amazing.
Well, thank you, Marcy.
So much. We've learned so much from you. This has been incredible. Thank you for making this commitment to change. I'm so sure that you're going to inspire others. You're going to inspire them to step up and sign the pledge. We have a couple more special guests, including Dame Vivian Hunt. Dame Vivian is the managing partner of McKinsey & Company in the UK and Ireland and has an impressive list of accomplishments and accolades, including being named the most influential Black woman in Britain and one of the top 25 consultants in the world. And she has long been a powerful advocate for minority voices in the corporate world. Here's a message now from Dame Vivian Hunt.
Hello, it's a privilege to be with you today at the inaugural BlackNorth Summit. This meeting is an important and public commitment to the reduction of racism and inclusion of Black and diverse talent in Canadian business and society. I know many of you have already signed the pledge, but the public endorsement that this meeting represents is an important moment for Canadian society and business. In many ways, all of us are making both a personal as well as a professional commitment, moving from a neutral stance to one that is proactively anti-racism and proactively inclusive of historically under-marginalized groups. I hope the work that BlackNorth will deliver will be a template not only for progress within the Canadian Black community, but also for many other Indigenous and other underrepresented groups. At McKinsey, we have spent more than 20 years working on talent and understanding what high-performing investors and companies do to deliver better outcomes. Our work on diversity includes the most recent report of Diversity Wins and Diversity Still Matters that highlight, again, positive correlation between diverse executive teams and inclusive environments with higher performance. Companies that are more diverse on gender, ethnic diversity, and other skills are more successful in every sector, every country in our data set. And so if high-performing companies and high-performing investors are all more diverse, our challenge is now to figure out how we can implement that in each of our companies and more systematically as a society. Our series found that the performance differential between top and bottom quartile companies was very significant. It's a 15% performance differential for gender alone and over 30% for ethnic and cultural diversity. Equally important, successful companies also have inclusive cultures. It doesn't mean they have perfect cultures, but they are structured in terms of building an inclusive environment for all of their employees and suppliers, consciously building belonging, proactively building an evidence of equality, and many other steps that you can take amongst your managers and leaders to build the skill of managing diverse teams. And when you manage diverse teams well, better decision making and better outcomes result. Most businesses are looking for every element of higher performance, and diversity inclusion is a part of that formula for all of the successful companies in our data set. We are at an important pivotal moment in business and in society. COVID-19, both as a public health crisis as well as a simultaneous economic crisis, in addition to the challenge to civil liberties and justice in recent weeks, has sharpened all of our focus and increased the need and indeed expectation that we will all act. It's a time when we're experiencing health, economic, and social fragility, and we need high quality leadership, particularly from business and government, now more than ever. COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted vulnerable communities. Our work and research on the impact on jobs illustrates that over 50% of the jobs, for example, in North America or the UK, are classified as lower paid, under £10 an hour or under $15 an hour. And that means that low wage earners are in more fragile work and more likely to be furloughed, laid off, or unable to work given that they can't work remotely. Similarly, 40% of Black Americans, for example, are directly threatened by furlough and reductions. And I don't have any doubt that the Canadian data set for the Black population and other historically underrepresented groups would show similar trends. That disproportionate impact is also illustrated in health risk through roles often as frontline key workers, or indeed an underlying health status that is not as resilient relative to COVID. The data is very clear, and it gives us the requirement and challenge to build back our businesses, build back our supply chains, build back our hybrid working models with more clarity around the vulnerable populations who are most impacted. This is no less the case for young people and other fragile communities, but building that in explicitly as we respond and rebuild the Canadian economy is a significant change in our approach relative to the financial crisis or the recession of 2001. And so now is the time for action. The BlackNorth Pledge and the broader commitments of the Canadian business community are an important public and concrete first step. The clarity of your actions, particularly focus on talent pipelines at the student and intern, as well as executive pipeline level, are clear and also quantitative. So we look forward to holding ourselves account. As a leader myself of a large practice within McKinsey and advising many, many clients across their businesses, and frankly, looking at our own data, we know that achieving what BlackNorth aspires to is not in tension or contradiction with your business goals. The challenge now is finding ways to incorporate the pledge and deliver it with and through your companies. We all have to make commitments and show progress. Measuring and managing these outcomes is extremely important. And if we're honest, we've had hesitancy around making concrete targets and commitments in areas where we haven't had good measurement or good data or didn't feel real pressure and accountability. You've made that step change with the pledge, and I know measuring your progress on recruitment and attainment, as well as inclusion, will move the needle for BlackNorth, as well as for Canadian business. I'm looking forward to seeing your progress. Thank you.
That is absolutely fantastic. As Dame Vivian mentioned, McKinsey has spent more than 20 years understanding what high-performing companies do. And when she wrote an article on why diversity matters, her research statistically proved that diversity is a competitive differentiator for companies. And those who are more diverse and inclusive in their hiring practices see financial returns above the national industry. Definitely something to think about following today's discussions. So, we have one last special guest, and he is no stranger to championing strong, diverse teams. Masai Ujiri is the president of the Toronto Raptors. He is a Canadian hero and an advocate for diversity. As seen through his own Giants of Africa initiative and as an ambassador for Right to Play, Masai has always been a champion for change. He was originally scheduled to be with us live today, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, he is currently in isolation with the Raptors team in Florida as they prepare to finish the NBA season. Still, Masai wanted to take the time and talk about his commitment to the cause. Here now is Masai.
Hi guys, hope you're all having a great day. Sorry I can't be there with you guys. As you can see, I'm in the bubble in Orlando. We're having a little fun here, trying to win another championship, but wanted to really chime in on this discussion. It's a big one. First and foremost, I want to say that this is a big stage for us to have all these people listening, CEOs, big-time executives having this discussion is so important. It's so important now that we actually have these tough conversations. And we know what these tough conversations are because this is a time when I know pledges have been made and we want to go do well by these pledges, but we really want to really attack what the issues are. When I look at Black Lives Matters or racism or fighting for Black or brown or indigenous people, I look at it from bottom to top and then from top to bottom. So what are the mentorship programs? What are we putting in place? Teaching, education, to help more Black people. How are we addressing systemic racism, institutional racism? And how are you addressing them in your organization? And then from the top, I'm looking at us as leaders. You go into boardrooms, you go into meetings, and how many Black people are you seeing? How many Black and brown people are you seeing in these meetings? You are all in power positions. When you go to your little board meetings or your little power meetings, how many Black people are you seeing there? Or brown people or indigenous people? That's where we have to think. Yeah, that's where we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, now we have to give opportunity. We have to bring people into higher positions, into executive positions, so there are more Black and brown and indigenous people in these rooms that are making these key decisions. And then I'm telling you guys that you have to make the effort to go find these talented Black and brown people. Don't always give the excuses of, oh, they can't be strategists, or they are not good enough to do that, or they are not qualified enough to do that. If that was the case, I wouldn't be in the position that I am in now. And there are so many people better, much better than I am. So we have to take our time. We have to be intentional. We have to be deliberate. And it's one of the things I've challenged myself with. It's one of the things that I've challenged myself in our organization. So now is the time for all of us, as CEOs, as leaders, to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what are we doing? It has to be inclusion now. And you have to look at yourself as a human being. First and foremost, look at yourself as a human being, because it's all about that. Yeah? Give a chance to every single person. Give a chance to everybody, an equal chance, equality. That's what we're talking about. And let's not all like look at this thing as doing stuff just to make up. Yeah, so people see that, okay, yeah, if not, just don't do it. Yeah, don't do it because it's time. Here's what I'm telling everybody. It's time for everybody to come to the table. White people, black people, indigenous people. This is not a time for blame. It's not a time for anybody to use excuses. This is a time for everybody to come and do the right thing. Be passionate, okay? Be passionate about this because sometimes I think we think in Canada we might be immune to it, but we're not, okay? Because I'm telling you, systemic, institutional racism exists. And we have to do away with it. We have to do away with it. So go and strip it, okay? Go and look at it, okay? Let's not just come here and do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pledges and say, okay, we've done it and we joined this association and we've hired this person in human resources and we're good to go. Make an effort. Let's make an effort as people because we have one of the best countries in the world. We are people, we're global citizens, and we're people that represent and are diverse, represent people from all over the world. Every part. And every person has a part to play. So I'm sorry I couldn't be here with you guys today, but as you can see it, we're here with the Raptors, trying very hard to bring another championship back to Canada. I wish you guys the best. And if there's anything you guys need from me, feel free to contact me. This is something I feel very, very strongly about, very, very strongly about. And I know that the Raptors, MLSC, we're going to try and be leaders. We're going to try and not only call it out, but we're also going to try and be the action. Yeah, go and get it done. Yeah, let's be the model. Let's be the people that set the example here. Yeah, because racism does exist. It does exist in all over the world. And we have to work so hard to eradicate racism. So thank you guys, and God bless you.
We hear you, Masai, and thank you. And a huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. More than 3,000 viewers tuned in. Thank you to all of our guests and the BlackNorth co-chairs, Rola, Prem, Victor, and of course, Wes.
We want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen and to learn. Since the beginning of the summit, we have already had many CEOs reach out to provide mentorship for the BIPOC community. Thank you, and we'll be connecting with you all after the summit. We thank everyone involved who shares our passion and help make this day possible. Everyone on stage and also those behind the cameras as well. A lot of work went into this summit, as you could imagine, but there's still a lot of work to do in the future. Over the past couple of months, we've been shown over and over that it's not enough not to be racist, but we must be actively anti-racist. We cannot just stand in solidarity. We need to move in solidarity. The BlackNorth Initiative is committed to moving forward, creating opportunities to make systemic change and to end systemic racism in Canada. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup to you, Wes. Thank you so much. We encourage everyone to keep the conversation going on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BlackNorth Initiative Summit and follow the handles at BlackNorthCA. You can also access the pledge and learn how to get involved with BlackNorth by going to our website, blacknorth.ca. All the great swag you see here today is available on the website, and a portion, there you go, show it off. And a portion of the proceeds from all BlackNorth merch will go towards a scholarship program for Black students attending university and will help set up future community programming as well. We wanted to take this moment to thank all of our sponsors and partners for helping us with this special event. We could not have done this without you. Thanks to all the crew and production team for all your hard work. We so appreciate you. Hope you've enjoyed the summit. I have learned so much today. Remember to listen, remember to move with empathy. Share with your friends. Let's spread the word. Let's get to work.